Parenting is hard. Few of us feel up to the task. The world is shifting, quickly and dramatically. All of us feel the changes affecting our families. The stress and pressure can be intense. We are here to help sort the good and the bad, provide insight, and bring hope. Welcome to Brilliantly Brave Parenting. We're so glad you stopped by.
Hi, and welcome to Season 5 of Brilliantly Brave Parenting. I am your co-host and partner in crime with Robert Beeson. I'm Pastor Brad Mathias.
Hi, Pastor Brad. Robert
Beeson.
So one of the things we've been doing that, if you've been listening, you know, we have been spending a little time letting you guys get to know us a little bit. And we do that by way of asking each other random questions based on a number that you pick. So, Brad, I'm going to let you pick a number, and then I'm going to ask you a question, and you have to be completely honest or you get shocked.
6.
Let's see. No, I don't like that one. Pick another one.
Goodness sakes.
Well, that's too easy.
7.
It's not up. It's not available.
8. This doesn't feel fair.
Have you been pleasantly surprised by anything lately?
Yeah.
Okay. What?
Oh, no, I answered the question.
Now you need to expound on that.
Oh, that's the second question. What have I been pleasantly surprised about? The Titans.
No doubt.
As a football team, just in general, like beat the Patriots.
Well done. That's a good answer. Yes. I concur.
I danced around my living room for a good solid 5 minutes.
It was incredible. I was there, and it was like absolutely, we were kind of looking at each other going, did that really just happen?
I would say it's almost like a miracle.
It is almost like a miracle. And the cool thing is I was there for the time we beat the Eagles and we beat the Patriots. So we beat both Super Bowl teams in the same season, which is like our Super Bowl.
I think you should attend more often.
I think I should too.
Yeah.
Although I was there when Baltimore kicked our butts too. So
well, okay.
I'm not sure that works that way. But
yeah, it's funny. You know, I'm in a fantasy football league at church. As the pastor, you're sort of supposed to do it. This is the first year I've ever been in first place. So, like, I don't know what's going on with the whole football thing this year, but I've always been like last. Like 5 years in a row, I've lost terribly. And this year,
a pastor's supposed to serve, not like it feels.
I let the computer pick my team this year. That's what happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I've always been really prideful about picking my own team, and this year I was like, you know what? Just let the thing pick it. And
okay.
Now I'm winning.
Well, there you go. Okay.
So that's like an analogy of the Holy Spirit.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, it's like the GPS of your life. You let God lead and let Him pick, and He does way better than we do, right?
That's true. And seldom what we predict.
Well, today we are privileged to have in-studio guests. So for those of you who are not watching us on YouTube, you are missing out. For those of you who are listening, that's great. But come back and check us out on YouTube, and you'll get to meet this lovely couple that we have in the studio with us, Tom and Lori Carr, who are married now a short 38 years. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty short. These days it feels short.
Yeah, it's fun.
Some years are longer than others.
You know, just that alone makes you an expert in parenting.
Absolutely.
Just the fact that you have survived almost 4 decades of marriage, and the fact that you're smiling and sitting close, you're touching each other,
holding each other's hands. That's like
there's no hostility in the room that's intangible. You guys appear to be actually in love and friends. So
yeah, that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So are you guys alike, or are you?
Oh, no.
We are not alike in any way.
So the compatibility isn't natural. Is that what you're saying?
It's a learned skill.
I think the odds were against us.
Well, it helped that we loved each other and had some motivation to learn, but I knew nothing about what it meant to be married when I got married. Fortunately, I had men around who sort of taught me what it meant, what it looked like to have a relationship. And Lori is a people person. So, for instance, when we were in college and we were going out and I would call her, that's back when you had a phone.
And I felt like he didn't like me very much when he called me.
Because
his voice was very dull.
Yeah. And she said, you should look in the mirror and smile when you talk to me on the phone. So I did that and I sounded better and it was fine. She knew I was doing something weird, but as long as I sounded good, she was happy.
And that's a tip from a pro. They say that actually, if you're singing, you're in the studio, you are to smile when you sing. It brightens your tone.
Oh, well,
there
it worked.
True story.
Yeah. And then once we got married, I was told, you know, she needs to know I love her. And I grew up in a
Verbally.
family where we never told each other we loved each other. That wasn't, so I had to just schedule it. So 3 times a day I would tell her I loved her.
And you had to touch me too.
Yeah. And after a while I got used to
Because
it.
he's like Mr. Spock a little bit.
Okay, so let's just for the
This is going to be fun.
just for the benefit of the audience, Tom is an engineer.
Yeah.
He's really more of a scientist.
Okay, so he's a scientist, analytical.
Have you seen The Good Doctor on TV?
I have. Yeah.
He has some of those tendencies. Not completely,
So-
but you would admit that.
Yeah.
Very analytical, very methodical, very organized,
In his brain.
logical person. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
And you are not? Is that what you're saying, Lori?
I always thought I was,
Uh-huh.
but I'm not. Not by nature. I've had to learn things.
You're a feeler.
I can tell when things aren't right. So, like, if I don't say the proper word, it's like almost nails on a chalkboard for you.
Right.
So
Well,
your precision and your passion.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, there we are.
You got
So
it.
what we have is a healthy couple who have migrated through 40 years of life together, successfully raised children, grandchildren,
And we
and
like our kids.
and you like your kids and your kids like you. So for our audience who are in the middle of the stresses of raising their own kids, trying to survive that whole twisted process of paying a mortgage and going to church and being involved in your kids' lives and trying to find a way to take care of yourself in the middle of all that, there's hope.
It's
You can get through that.
the hardest job we ever did, but my favorite.
But you can definitely get through it.
Yes.
Well, you can flourish in it as a family.
Rather than get through it.
Yeah.
So there's more to it than just surviving it. You can actually thrive.
Oh, sure.
Well, yeah, and I think that's a key thing that we try to help people see is you want to be on the offense. You want to be raising your kids, living your life, not sort of being carried along by whatever's going on.
Being intentional.
Yeah, being intentional.
That's so good. Give us an example of what that looks like. Because I get what you're saying in the sense of you want to be proactive and you want to, because I think nowadays we live in such a culture and a society that is so fast paced
Oh, yeah.
that it seems like we're just catching up all the time.
Correct.
And so for those of us, I'll speak as myself, it's difficult to schedule in enough buffer to be intentional. And so what did that look like for you? What are some things that you did intentionally in your marriage and in your parenting that gave you that advantage?
The first thing we did was we had been married a couple years. Tom was in grad school, and we ended up getting involved in a Bible study with this couple who wanted to lead leaders of churches, young, newly married couples, and equip them on how to be married, how to raise kids, and how to have a ministry within a church context.
Okay.
And we did that for 3 years, and that.
Yeah, so I think the first principle that comes out of that is be proactive for yourself to get the information, the wisdom, get somebody around you who's done it before. I mean, that was a huge advantage we had.
And yeah.
And then can I say a second thing is ever since we were in graduate school, almost every single week we've had lunch together.
Really?
Once a
Yes.
week, and it's a business meeting.
Mhm.
So we get together. She has her schedule. I have mine. We go through the coming week because a lot of the stuff when you have little kids is you just don't know what's coming and when it's going to come.
Right.
Especially if you have 2 careers or 1 career and a stay-at-home mom. Planning takes so much pressure off.
Yeah.
And so everyone at work just knew if it's Friday, I'm not going to be there. No
Trained
lunch
everybody.
meetings, no nothing. Lori and I have
A business meeting.
we have a business
And the
meeting.
business meeting is actually brilliant. I think it saved us a lot of pain, especially Tom. He's not a super social person. So going through the calendar helped us have conversations. Do we really need to go to every birthday party? And it might be even more than just our ability to be social. It might be financial. So you get to have that conversation on, babe, we don't have enough money for another birthday present.
Right.
And I think it was wonderful for us.
You're talking about your kids'
that.
birthdays.
Yes, and all their parties.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And so, or even adult ones, but the calendar is more than the calendar. It's all the issues that go with what's on the calendar.
That's a good quote. The calendar is more than the calendar because of all the things that you have to invest in, from the finances to the time, even energy, right?
Yeah.
As parents, you get worn out. There's something about the church. And you guys have been very active in the church. You've been an elder in a church. You've been a MOPS leader. You guys have been mentors and coaches and parenting support. You've been in and around the church your whole life, it sounds like. But there is something about the church where people feel obligated.
Yes.
Talk about that a little bit. How did you fight through that?
Well, we learned to make boundaries.
Yeah, I mean, our mentors told us to be very strategic with our time, you know.
And careful what you choose.
Yeah. Well, we feel like God showed us what he had called us to do in life. And so we narrow our focus down to that. I mean, that includes loving people and getting to know them. But
of course.
We do that within the context of our small group or, you know, whatever.
Well, one of the things Jack always said to us was, the need is not the call. And
I love that. That's a great.
Changed my life.
The need is not the call.
Yeah, because you feel like, oh, I have to help that person move. I have to bring a meal. I have to, pretty soon.
Every need that you see doesn't mean that you're called to meet that need necessarily.
Right. Even if you're emotionally pulled. And so we kind of discussed how many nights we were able to do things and what that would include. And number one has always been our relationship. And then after that, the kids, and then ministry.
I love that.
They're eternal.
So then that carried over to, in our family, you know, we had a regular family meeting.
Yes.
With the kids, as soon as the kids were old enough to be in school and have things coming up.
So they'd bring their little calendars, and our 2-year-old was so excited because she would bring a notebook and pretend to write in it. And...
So, you know.
Every week you did this.
We did it pretty much every week.
Yeah.
A family meeting and then a business meeting between you two every week.
Yes.
Yeah, but it doesn't take as much time as you think.
If you're doing it every week.
And then an hour one evening, we don't watch TV, we have the family meeting. And that's where, okay, maybe there's too many things on a day, so one of the kids has to find a ride.
Yes.
So you say, okay, honey, that sounds like something you really want to do. You're going to have to find a ride. I'll help you find it, but you're going to have to get there a different way.
I don't have the capacity. Or I think once our first two are 18 months apart and very involved and stuff. And then we had 6 years later a little surprise. And so sitting at the table with a junior in high school, a senior in high school was intense.
Yes.
Because I'm just one person.
I can vouch for that.
Yeah.
And their schedules were crazy. And so I think it helped the kids to see actually on paper what I went through.
Yeah. Understanding the struggle of it all and just the everything, you know, I talk to the
just
kids.
You're saying no all the time.
No,
right.
I tell my kids all the time, everything costs something. Like saying no to something costs something, saying yes to something costs something. And when they see that struggle, I think it helps. Can we park here for just a second?
Yeah.
I'm really curious for my own sake here. Okay. What does this weekly business meeting look like between you and your wife, you two? What is that? I mean, is it always business, or is it sometimes just catching up, or is it just?
We call it business just because it's about our relationship, but it could be something I've been doing that's offending Lori, and she'll bring it up at that meeting.
And
it's just a forum where you bring.
And for many women, they'll get irritated and they think their husband doesn't care about things, or, you know, they've had a little tiff, and there's no, you know, when you have a lot of children, there's no time to say, excuse me, 5 beloved children, we need to go have a chat. You know, you can't do that.
Yeah.
And so we have done it on occasion if it's severe.
Of course.
And they all go. But I write it in my calendar, discuss tiff or whatever. And the thing for Tom, and I've learned this a lot, and I don't want to generalize, but for men, is it helps if they know this is the time we're going to discuss these things. There's not a defensiveness. You're all ears.
Yeah, because it's not an emotional reaction.
Right. And we have 45 minutes, and we always would go to the same place for lunch, meet halfway. I beg people to watch my kids.
I love that. Because,
I absolutely love that.
Because I think of I've had family meetings, and usually it's crisis driven.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, typically when you're going out of a normal schedule to have a meeting, it's not good. Like
typically,
it's
no.
just not
it's like being called
time.
to the office. It's not to say good job.
Yeah, exactly. You're going before the principal, and or your wife is telling you, this credit card.
We need to talk.
You bought something and didn't talk to me about it. You're slinking around because you just.
I feel a wound there. You could confess something.
Did you want to talk more?
Yeah. So but as a pastor, I've had this experience as well, where wives are upset with their husbands, and their husbands are literally ignorant.
Yes.
Like they have no idea what they did or what's going on. And so I think it was an earlier guest this week on our who said that
I know exactly where you're going with this.
Expectations without communication lead to frustration.
Oh yeah.
So
deep hurt.
Yeah. So I love the fact that you guys had a sort of a valve in your marriage to keep pressure from building up.
Yeah. One other thing I would say is it helps if you know how to communicate as a husband and wife when you're in those situations and learn not to react. And we would recommend a book called Fighting for Your Marriage, which walks you through how to develop those kind of communication skills. It's really good. It helped us.
Do you remember the author? Who that is?
Markman. There's 3 authors, and Markman is one of the authors.
Okay.
Fighting for Your Marriage.
Yes.
Fighting for Your Marriage. Yeah.
We've taught that a ton, and it's wonderful.
Well, this is all kind of going back to where you started, and that is being proactive. And I think, Brad, you said it well, is providing a valve for release of before it becomes a crisis. I think that's amazing. One of the things that we got prior to this is just the idea of, and I found this provocative at first, but I think I know where you're going, and that is the idea that our kids are foolish, not good or bad. Can you unpack that a little bit?
I feel very passionate about this one because
it's so not PC to, but yeah, politically correct, PC to say that.
But started off real quick. So that comes from there's a verse in Proverbs that says, foolishness is bound up in the heart of a child. And that's a really key concept because then you can look through Proverbs and see what it says foolishness is like. And you go, oh, my kids are like that sometimes. They're like that sometimes. They're like that sometimes. And so then Proverbs gives you insight on how to deal with foolish behavior.
And for a child, like if a mom will say, well, this is my good one. This is my good child. What is happening to that poor child? They are no longer, depending on their bent and personality, but typically the good child has a certain bent that they will try to maintain that reputation. And so if they sin or do something that
it affects identity.
Which they're going to do.
It affects their identity and they're going to become secretive or however it plays out, it's very dangerous. And it's harder, I find, because I've worked with so many women, that it's hard for them to admit that they sinned because they have been working so hard to
maintain
the good child. And then you have the bad child. Oh, this is the child that is, you ought to see him. Well, he's like, how can I win?
Right.
Or she. In our family, it might have been a...
Well, and I think the other thing for a parent is to understand that verse applies to all your kids.
Yes.
All of them have foolishness in there. It comes out in different ways, right? Like Lori said, the one child feels most comfortable or safe when they're going with the plan. So there's the ones that want to help you carry the groceries in, and we label them godly. We label them all kinds of things.
They're perfect.
And then there's the child who wants to make their own way in life. They just came out of the womb. We had one like that. I mean, every 2 weeks, she would go around and just see if the rules were still the rules. She would find all the lines and step over them just to see if they were still there. Well, that's also foolish, just like the good one keeps secrets. That's foolish too. So as a parent, I need to be able to deal with both of those kinds of foolishness for the benefit of that child. But I don't start panicking because my one's confronting me. I don't think that's evil. It's just foolish. Yeah. And the same with the other one. So that's where that concept
I think it's a
comes
really
in.
great distinction, because it also takes the weight off of, in my mind, going, one of the frustrations that I have with my kids sometimes is like, you should have known that. Like, how do you, but if I can like reframe the way, like, I shouldn't expect them to know. They came out of the womb foolish.
Like us.
Like, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
I know. You've got
we'll
perfect
pray
kids.
for you.
Yeah, no, So I think some psychologists have said the compliant or the confrontational child.
Yes.
So this idea that there are, usually the first child is typically a perfectionist. Typically. They want to be that achiever, and they want to sort of earn praise, and they're sort of the teacher's pet, if you will. I had 3, and the middle one for us was the confrontational. She was the one who said no.
And what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, exactly. And, didn't like to wear clothes, and, just she was a free spirit, so to speak. I love the fact that you're helping differentiate for the parent, not only how they speak about that child in front of them, but how they think about that child.
Exactly.
Because
helps you.
That can really trip up a parent, especially a mom who's a stay-at-home mom who's dealing with that all day.
Yeah.
And then you come home and that child is so excited to see dad, and mom's just sort of dropped.
Yeah.
So a lot of moms get angry with their kids.
Well, I'll just. Okay. Our first was that one. She was really difficult, and I was more of a compliant child growing up. And so I remember she wasn't even 1, and every day was such a hard day with her, but she had a sweet little face, and nobody knew that about her except me. But I remember crying on the floor. Just, I couldn't, she was tougher than me. She was stronger than me. She had an iron will. I mean, one time she was reaching for the knob on the toilet at the base, wanting to eat it as I'm slapping her fingers. I mean, she just was
My oldest
tougher
was like
than
that
me.
too.
I had an image all of a sudden there that I think if you're a parent, like you've had these moments, these sort of Waterloos, if you will, these battles.
Yes. But God spoke to me and said, Lori, I chose her for your benefit. And that really kind of turned the page for me in parenting our children, that each child was chosen for us, for our benefit and their benefit. And so I began to look
There's
more
design
at
to it.
as a professional, thus the meetings, thus, everything.
Yeah.
And thanking God. So that child who no meant, well, let's try another way, is now an entrepreneur and is taking no's all the time. But for her, well, we'll just go in another door.
Exactly.
And it's not personal. And she shares Christ everywhere.
And that thing that Lori just said, I mean, when you have the confrontational child, it can feel personal.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Even at age 2.
And really, it probably isn't personal.
It's
You
sport.
just happen to be the thing in their way.
It is sport. Sure. I think that's exactly right.
And there is a proverb, right? Sin is like sport to a fool. That's in Proverbs. Well, there's one of those foolish things.
Well, as I'm thinking about that, I think a lot of churches will talk about the idea that God has given those kids to us because we're the perfect parents for them. But this is a new twist on that, which is God gave us those kids
benefit.
because they're for us to be perfected, refined, sanctified, if we go theological. So I think the bigger picture here is for the parent that's listening to us. Our audience is mostly moms who are driving home or going to school or going to work. And they're probably exhausted, tired, are feeling like failures sometimes. I can remember my wife being on the floor in tears, just, I can't do this. I'm not cut out. I've heard that 100 times.
Yes.
What encouragement would you give a mom right now who's listening, who just feels like she just is not up for this?
To find a friend who feels the same way, and you can be iron sharpens iron for each other, and trusting your husband to share that with him. But mostly, well, I don't want to say mostly, but having a confidence that Jesus is there and he cares, and you can do it because of him, but that means I have to know him, so I have to figure out how to spend 2 seconds knowing him.
Mm-hmm.
And know it's just a season.
Yeah. That's important, isn't it? To help remember that this doesn't last.
You'll get through. That was the hardest. Those toddlers were so difficult because we did the work.
Mm-hmm.
But people told us to do that.
And if you do your work when they're young, it gets better.
Yeah.
I mean, establishing that relationship, helping them learn what self-control is, developing self-control in them. So one of our kids, the confrontational one, I mean, she was confrontational up until she was, when did she come and say?
It was like second grade.
Second grade. And finally she came up to Lori and said, Mom, I'm going to do things your way because I've learned that I don't ever win.
I fainted.
It took her till second grade to figure that out.
I think some parents would say that's still waiting to happen.
It's been about 20 years for mine.
I think we have very few rules, and your word has to be your word. You have to win.
So have very few rules, but maintain the ones you have.
And that is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life.
Really good advice.
It takes time and energy.
It does, and God is faithful, and the principles in the Bible, and following those very simple, laid out plans. I mean,
it's not complicated.
It's not, but we complicate. I complicate it because we wrestle and we're tossed around by our feelings, and so we're foolish parents sometimes.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
Well, we're still a work in progress.
And the cool thing is, we'll say you can't touch the TV knobs. I'm just making that up.
Back when TVs had knobs.
Yeah, exactly.
What are those?
We're dating ourselves.
And so we've gone along, and I'm exhausted, and I see our oldest touch it. I see the next one touch it. And I'm exhausted pretending I didn't see because I didn't have the energy to deal with it. So then pretty soon the rule changes, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So Tom and I, he'll look at me like, really, Lori, you're going to let this happen, or vice versa. And so we sit down at a business meeting saying, this rule no longer exists. What are we going to do about it? So we make a plan. So we sit down with the kids, usually when they were young. And Jack and Cynthia taught us this. So we would hang our heads low to say, we have sinned against you. We have allowed you to continually touch the knobs. And we have just sinned against God because that was a rule and we haven't reinforced it.
Would you forgive us?
Would you please forgive us?
Quiet. I bet.
And then we say, so that rule is back in effect. We didn't do our job, but we're going to do it going forward.
And typically Anne would, sorry, sweetie. The next morning, she would see if it was.
Okay, so there's obviously some structure to your home.
Yes.
Where, as I'm listening to you and kind of the way that you parented, you created a schedule or a consistent, regular time as a family to talk. You scheduled a consistent time as a couple to talk. And so there were places for you to parent versus reactionary stuff.
Yes.
Well, we had reactionary
and we did
stuff
a
too.
Great job up until junior high.
Yes.
And then it sort of got faster than we were used to.
Yes.
I would say we didn't do quite as good a job.
I was wondering about, I'm trying to think of the schedules in high school.
A little faster than we were used to.
still had the meetings, and they were very valuable, and I think we did reasonably well. But Lori and I had some relationship issues during that time, and I think
we weren't a team.
We weren't a team like we were earlier, and that caused some problems, honestly, with the kids. Not major ones, but they still
Disruptions.
were there.
Yes.
And there were some things, you're not going to be, there's no perfect parent, right? For instance, our middle one is our son. And there were some things that as a father, I really didn't do with him that I should have.
Out.
And it caused real problems for him in his life when he got to be older and in college. But he told me about them. We talked about them. And then God led us to where, so he was at UCLA and we lived in San Diego, so it's a 100-mile drive. So I would drive up every Saturday morning and have breakfast with him. And we would talk through things. And I did that for 3 years, and God restored our relationship.
Yeah.
So things usually aren't
perfect,
but they can be reconciled.
Right.
And that was maintaining that reconciliation is really the core. We're not going to be perfect. Our goal is not to be perfect. It's to be reconciled and on the same team.
And to be obedient to Jesus and reconciled with him. So I think that's what I would tell people. It seems backwards because we don't have time to sit with Jesus and get reconciled because we're running too fast.
Yeah.
And that's backwards. So if you can't spend time with Jesus or each other, then you're in trouble.
So, Hun, can I ask her a question?
Yeah.
So when the kids were 2 and 3 and 4, what did it look like for you to spend time with Jesus?
I usually, after each baby, the first year I didn't really spend time with Jesus. I don't have a journal from those years.
Sure.
By the third, I said, I'm not going to have a journal this year. It's fine. God still loves me and I love him. You know, you get confident in that. That's why getting a mentor when you're a young mom is really good. But what it looks like is I just would figure out how to do it. And I chose friends that had the same heart.
Yeah.
It helped.
You know, you guys are talking about reconciliation. I think there are probably parents right now who have a teenager or college age student and they're just feeling like they've blown it.
Yeah.
There's no recovery.
Yep.
What do you say? What do you tell someone in that
So
state?
I just want to jump on that one. Typically what a mom does is they go to that child, maybe they've grown a lot and they've understand what they've done, and they go to the child and they ask for their forgiveness or say they're sorry that they weren't a good mom. But it usually becomes about the mom being so sorry and crying and so sad that what can that child say?
Right.
So I think
back them into a corner.
Yeah.
They're not going to be truthful.
Right.
Yeah.
Mom, it wasn't that bad.
So if you're in that spot as a parent, I think the first thing to know is the reconciliation will take a while. And you're going to have to establish a relationship in order for there to be a context for that reconciliation. So it starts with getting to know them, being open to what they want to say. It may involve hearing some things that are unfair.
Yes.
How does God reconcile with us? What has he done for us? He's the one who took the first step. He took the initiative. He paid a price for it.
And we don't want to hear it, and we want to be defensive.
And I would say the second thing is being reconciled can be your desire, but it can't be a goal because you can't control whether they ever are willing to do that.
That's a really important distinction.
Yeah. So it's got to be, Lord, I really want this to happen. Help me to do it. And then you do the things you know you can do, but leave their response with God because he's the only one that can reach their heart.
Otherwise, we turn into manipulators. And that's such a good point.
And one of the things that we learned early on too was don't make it the children's responsibility for you to be happy.
Yeah.
And so as our children are now 33, 32, and 26, occasionally something will come up in a conversation and there's a little bit of like, oh, I screwed up in that. And so I have to be honest and stop and say, so hun, how did you feel during that time? Do I really want to hear it? Because I feel so bad. And there's lots of opportunities for our kids to say stuff. But I remember one conversation with my son, and he shared it, and it just hurt, and yet it was true. And it was his reality. And so that's another thing to remember. Their reality might not be reality, but it's their reality. And so for this, I think it was true on my part. But that's really important to remember when they're sharing that it might not have been that, but you don't need to tell them. So he just shared something, and I was devastated. and yet thankful, not happy, thankful. And I had to just leave it at the foot of Jesus every time it came up. Does that make sense? Because it hurt. It was ouchy.
Yeah. We've been talking with Tom and Lori Carr, and some of the comments and things that you're saying are very rich and worth pondering a little bit, really taking to heart. And one of the things you just said, and maybe we can end on this, is this idea that reconciliation can't be manipulation. It can't be a parent sort of backing a child into an emotional corner to hear what they want to hear.
Yeah.
It has to be more to it than that. And I think that's been modeled to us by media, by sitcoms, by, soap operas, whatever we've been watching.
Everywhere.
And I also think it's just uncomfortable and hard, so no one really wants to do that.
It's icky.
So parenting sometimes takes a lot of courage to face some of these truths and allow ourselves to go through a process rather than avoid one. And so I appreciate you taking the time to come in on a cold day and share from your heart about some of your experiences. They're certainly very helpful. And I know you've helped Robert because he needs more help than I do.
That's true. That's true. I'll take that.
Doesn't help.
I'm humble.
No, man. So Robert and I have both many times admitted our inadequacy as fathers and as parents.
But what I find really helpful about what you guys are saying is exactly what you just said. The reconciliation is...
Dude, I've done that.
Yeah, I totally have done that. I've turned it into manipulation.
Because then it's about you.
Right.
It's all about, I just went off the hook.
Right.
And
Exactly. I'm trying to clean my side of the street.
I feel bad, so make me not feel bad. And that's not parenting. That's...
Well, it doesn't foster real authentic connection. So I love what you guys have shared, and I've been making a laundry list in my mind of all the things I need to kind of bring before my kids and go, here, I'm so sorry I've blown it like this, but in a good way.
Don't touch the knobs.
Yeah, don't touch the knobs. There's so many rules that I should not have had. I'm kind of thinking all of them going, that was my problem. I had too many rules.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you guys so much.
Thank you for coming in the studio. God bless you guys, and I look forward to having you back.
It was fun.
Yeah, sure.
What our kids believe is going to define them for a lifetime. According to George Barna, by the age of 13, what a kid believes is what he'll die believing. For parents and for pastors, that's a frightening experience, especially if you've got an 11 or 12-year-old. At the I Shine Ministries headquarters, this became a huge priority in the last year. We partnered with the Tween Gospel Alliance to bring you a brand new resource known as the Shock and Awe Study Guide. And I'm here with one of the co-founders of this entire program, Robert Beeson. Can you tell us, what is the Shock and Awe Study Guide?
It is awesome. More than that? Yeah. Okay. The Shock and Awe Study Guide is a super cool thing that either a parent can do with their kid, or a youth pastor can do with their students, or a children's pastor can do with their students. And here's the cool thing about it. It is apologetics for kids. So it's the really huge evidence and thoughts of apologetics wrapped in a way that is really tangible and simple for kids to understand, answering 4 primary questions. And they are, what if there's a God? What if the Bible is true? What if Jesus is who he said he was? And what if I'm part of that plan? And we believe if you can answer those 4 questions and you are drawn through evidence proving those 4 questions, that really it's gonna establish a pretty unshakable foundation of faith.
That sounds very helpful, especially if you're a parent or pastor and you're concerned about the condition of your child's faith, what they believe, what the voices of culture are telling them. If that's you and you're interested, go to ishinelive.com and check out in our web store the Shock and Awe Study Guide. It has a digital cloud video base, so it's 4 studies in a small paperback volume for $9, and it has 4 videos that go with 4 studies. It can be done in a weekend, it can be done over a month, or it can be done bi-monthly, however you need it. It is a fantastic resource that I have used as a pastor in my own home church, and I have been impressed. So check it out.
Check it out.
Well, Robert, that was such a great interview.
You don't feel awkward at all talking about people that are looking at us?
Not when I say good things. Not at all.
It was. I'm so grateful. There's so much insight, and I want to employ this, like all these things, business meeting, more family meeting. I mean, like, I think a long drive home, I'm going to have to go, oh my goodness.
I can send you my notes.
I think you should. It was very rich.
Yeah, I took 2 pages of notes for those who aren't watching on video. I think the bigger picture is that the whole idea of discipleship, okay, this idea of growing in your faith, I think it can be too abstract for a lot of us. I think we think of discipleship as just this abstract idea of becoming a better Christian, when in reality, discipleship is actually life skills, right? Like actually an interweaving of our life with biblical principles.
With each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so learning how to take biblical truth and apply it to the family, to parenting, to marriage, to just relationships in general is the wisdom that's offered by the Bible.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons the manuscript was left for us, right? This idea that we could have a map for our life. And so I just thought that was a really, really cool way to illustrate that point of how we can integrate in just a few simple things. And you could tell that could go on a long time.
Oh, heck yeah. We could talk about this for hours.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed it.
I did too. One of the big takeaways for me is just personally thinking about you, you're not good or bad. You're foolish. And that gives me a certain amount of grace for you. So I'm really glad that came up.
I stepped into that pretty deep. Well, I'll just trust the Lord to convict you of your pride. And I think for our listeners, we have this amazing ongoing relationship. And if you haven't seen some of the earlier podcasts, you probably should go back because Robert is remarkable. And we've had some really exceptional guests in the past seasons on this podcast.
We have.
You can check them out on brilliantlybraveparenting.com. They are organized by both the guest name and topic. So if you're a parent and you're struggling with something or you're just curious, check it out. It could be really helpful.
I know that they've changed my lives. I mean, my multiple lives.
He's a converted Buddhist. Yes.
Our podcasts have changed my life because every time we have a conversation like this, I get a little nugget. And so they are rich. We have a lot of really good insight. Not because we're so smart, but because we've been fortunate to be in the room with some very, very smart and wise people.
Yeah. And as our trailers say on the actual podcast itself, none of us feel brilliant or brave. This is not something that you approach with confidence as a parent. You know you need help. And so I would encourage you to go to the website and look up Tom and Lori Carr and just kind of find out what they're up to and what they're doing. Reach out to them. We'll have all their information and some of the references, including those books, available for you. So thanks. God bless.
Be encouraged, parents. You are not alone. In Paul's letter to his son in the faith, Timothy, he writes, "But I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed, and I am convinced that he is able to guard until that day what has been entrusted to me." Brilliantly Brave Parenting wants to be an encouragement and support that parents can rely on. Would you consider liking us and sharing us with a friend? As a part of the Tween Gospel Alliance, we are a nonprofit organization dependent on the support of friends like you. Thanks for stopping by. We'll be right here next week.
Well, we're very excited to announce a partnership with the guys that we know from Boise, Idaho, Robert.
Yes, we are. New release today. They're fantastic. Very, very relevant for what's going on. If you want to discover new music in the Christian realm, that's kind of the only place to go.
Yeah, and not only do they have amazing music and amazing reviews and just a lot of information about Christian artists, but they are creating with us a brand new devotional product. Call it IRL Resources.
Do you know what that stands for, Brad?
I found out.
You did? What does it stand for?
It stands for In Real Life.
That's exactly right, Brad. Very good. In real life, because a lot of times we have these standard devotionals that we see, and we thought that it would be kind of cool to use their expertise in Christian music, couple that with actual scriptural and devotional thought that digs you deeper, not only into the song, but incorporates it into real life. And so it's a very vibrant and very awesome resource for families and for pastors.
Yeah, and so if you have a preteen or a teen in your home and you're looking for a new devotional to do weekly, we have a digital subscription online at irlresources.com. It's very inexpensive. The first study is free to check it out. There's nothing to lose. You should go there and see what's the latest thing in Christian devotional.
Absolutely. You won't regret it.